Morning, folks. Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you all coming in. Yesterday, we watched a video on the 1G prep process. Now, I like that video, but the process is done a little differently than what I do. That person was using 1/2-inch plate. They worked with a 3/32 land, 3/32 gap. They also did a 70-18 hot pass. I don't do 70-18 hot passes. What I do is I do a 60-10 hot pass. I'm going to take you over to the whiteboard. I'm going to draw out how I normally lay out one of these welds. Then we're going to come back here. We're going to tack it up. We're going to put the root in, and we're going to put the hot pass in. So we're going to take a bit of a walk. All right, so I got these examples from the other day. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw up an example of a weld, how the passes all fit into that groove and how it looks or should be looking near the end of your weld. So this is stuff I've figured out over time to kind of keep myself successful. I try and pass this on to you guys, shorten the learning curve for you and give you as much information as I can that is relevant to what we're doing. I'm not going to give you a bunch of fluff you don't need to know. I'm going to give you what you need, and it's going to help you out, hopefully, make you successful welders. So we're going to, blue is going to be our color of the day for the weld material. All right, so normally a prepped up weld joint is going to look something like that. I run my gap at a tight 1/8. So I kind of, when I do this, I'll write it two ways. I'll write 1/8 negative or 3/32 plus. That just says I want a tight 1/8 or a big 3/32. So that's just how I kind of read that. And that's something that I've come up with over time. And that's going to be our root opening. Our land, I've got set at pretty much the same, 1/8 inch. So. So 1/8 negative or a 3/32 plus. This means a tight 1/8 or a big 3/32. So when I put my first pass in, I'm going to be standing above it, looking straight down on it. I'm not going to have any angle. I'm going to be vertical to the joint, but I'm going to have a few degrees of travel angle. So I'm going to travel, me being left-handed, I'm going to travel from right to left. And I'm going to have 15-ish degrees. And I'm going to get in there. I'm going to get that keyhole started. So you saw in the video. And I'm going to, I call it stepping back and forth. And that will burn away material, backfill the keyhole, does numerous things. But after we put that first pass in, we're going to have that kind of thing going on with our weld. So we're going to have this pass. It'll take up these edges here. It'll sit down in the bottom. And that's going to be our root pass. So we're going to so that'll be our root pass. The next pass we're going to do is going to be what I call the hot pass. So this is where I turn up my rod about 10 amps. So if I put this in at 75 amps, I'm going to put the hot pass in at 85 amps. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that puddle grabs both sides here. So I want to make sure I've got that there. I've got that there the whole way. This is important because we don't want any big, deep crevices here. If we get deep crevices here, that's going to be tough to get into to clear of material. We'll have to get a grinder. We'll have to be better with our welding, things like that. But if we lay this in fairly flat, the nice thing is it's going to save us a bunch of that extra work, therefore saving time. A lot of pipe gets welded based on the amount of inches you get done in a day. An 8-inch pipe's an 8-inch pipe. 24-inch pipes, 24 inches. So time is important. Not wasting time is definitely important. So we got the hot pass in there, and we have the root pass in there. Now, this is where you guys can start making your own decisions. Traditionally, the way I was taught, everything was weaved back and forth, side to side, even the cap. So we take our rod, we start it up and we weave, and we put a weave pass in. It might do that. Then the last pass will be another weave pass. And we put that in. So we'd end up with 4 passes in there. Now, a lot of things are shifting. A lot of things are changing. People are going more to stringers, which is fine. Stringers are actually better in certain aspects. They can help you control heat input and distortion more. So if it's something sensitive to like dimensionally sensitive, it has to stay the same dimension, and you have to weld like this, then maybe stringer beads are going to be better for that. So you can do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not going to care regardless. So what I would do here is I would put a stringer in there and a stringer in there. A little bit of overlap on the edge. 1, 2, 3. So that would be how I would approach that if I was doing it with just straight stringers. So we have pass number 1 is a root, pass number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Passes 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are going to be done with 70-18. So we use the 60-10 for the root pass, and then the hot pass. And then after that, we're going to go to 70-18. I run my 70-18 at about 120 amps, maybe 125. This though, with the root, I'm only going to run this at about 75 amps. It's maybe 78 tops. Important thing with this, we're adjusting the arc force on our machine to 100%. We want that rod to dig in here, fast fill, fast freeze, and create that nice bit of reinforcement on the bottom here. Anything protruding past the flat plane on the bottom, that's going to be reinforcement. And with these weld beads, you want just a little bit of reinforcement the whole way across. So that's what it looks like on a whiteboard. Let's do this in person, because this doesn't mean anything if you can't do it with these. So let's go do that. So for time's sake, I don't think I'm going to take you through all the fill stuff today, guys. What I might do is get the root, the hot pass, maybe 1 set of fill passes with stringers with 70-18. But we'll see how time goes. We'll let time kind of dictate where we're going with this today. All right. So these tables in the booths, kind of nasty. People have been welding on them quite a bit. Normally I like to keep them really flat because we need flat surfaces to tack up on. So today, instead of wasting time grinding this table, what I've done is I've taken a flat piece of channel, set it on the table, and I'm gonna tack these pieces up. Now, last Friday, we started preparing these, right? So we did the work, we ground on them, filed the edges, and what we're gonna do, pop them together, tight 1/8 gap, and we're gonna hold that gap by placing a welding rod between these pieces of plate. Welding rod. Got a few pieces here, this is good. So I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set one at the back, between those plates. Just make sure I've got a 1/8 gap there. So you find the 60-10 might lay flatter. There we are. So I'm gonna lay a 60-10 stub at the back here. Just gonna keep those plates 1/8 of an inch apart. I'm gonna take 1/8 rod at the front, poke it down into that gap, open that gap up to 1/8 of an inch. And what I'm gonna do is turn my welder on. I'm gonna set that to about 75 amps, 100% arc force. I'm gonna grab the 60-10, which I have right behind me here. And we're gonna put a tack in. Now at the 20 level, I tack across the ends of the plates. At the 30 level, I do a different style of tack. I tack in the groove where my tacks become part of my weld. But 20 level, we don't have to worry about that. We're gonna tack on the outside edge of the plate. All right, so that's set where I need it. Things are looking pretty good. I got some welding rods here, gloves, helmet, safety glasses. We are good to go. Let me get myself set up. Biggest thing is be comfortable while doing this. Awesome. Check it here. Just give that a little wipe, a little bit of smoke on it. All right, so on my 1/8 60-10, do here is we're gonna, now I hang these pieces off the end of the channel so I don't weld them to the channel. There's actually quite a good gap underneath here. That's just so I don't cover this channel in slag. So we're gonna weld a little bit on the end here. I'm just gonna use my fingers, hold these plates down. I'm gonna do what's called a bridge tack. I'm gonna jump from plate to plate. Tack those two together. Let's make that happen. So I've got that tack in place. I don't make them very big. It's just sitting right there on the end of the plate. I'm going to close this gap up a little bit. So when this shrinks, it opens up the other end. Close that up just a bit. Right about there. Going to jam a 332 rod in there to make sure it doesn't get any smaller. Well, I like the scrap buckets in the booth, guys. They really help out in this situation. Always have that stuff you need. All right, so looking at this tack I just put in, looks like the plate's moved. I'm not actually that happy with it. So I'm gonna crack this plate apart and we're gonna re-tack this. So that's the nice thing about light tacks is you can adjust them. So I got that pulled apart. I'm gonna make sure things are where we want them to be. I don't mind that gap at all. That's much better than it was the first time. When I touched it with the rod, I must have moved the plates first time. All right, so that's much better. Happier with that one for sure. So it's a tight 1/8. And a 332 here should slide right in. Yeah, big 332, tight 1/8. I'm going to open up this end here. A lot of times you do it by hand. If you can't, you can always grab something, wedge these two plates apart just slightly. You want to make sure that the plates are nice and even. There's no high-low between them. So I got the 332 rod in here. I'm just gonna put a little bit of weld on the end here. All good. All right, that's a sturdier tack than the last one, that's for sure. But I've got a nice even 332 gap between these plates. If you tack it right, that rod should pop out, no problem. So what we have here, guys, is a tacked up plate. Hard to see, but there is a gap. Pull away. If you end up with one end that's a little smaller than the other end, it does happen. So what I do is I start welding on the smaller end first. This side here is just a fraction of an inch smaller than this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start welding over here. Because if I weld this shut, it's going to pull these plates together. So what happens is as this weld cools, the end of the plates, the far end, is going to start pulling together just a little bit. So we want to make sure that we have all the opportunity to get this stuff done. Because if this pulls tight and we weld this bit last, we might not actually get penetration down in there. So we want to make sure we get that penetration. So we start on the small side first, weld to the bigger side. So with this, guys, I'm going to tack this onto the arm here. You get this set up. Get this arm where I like it, where I can work with it. Something like tack it right here. Now what I'm going to do, slide this out just a little bit more, a little closer to you. And I'm going to tack this to the end of here, just on the end of the plate. And this way you guys should be able to see how I'm working on it. So the 1G is a flat position, guys, right? So we're going to work on this just like this. This is flat. So for this, I'm going to put a new rod in. I'm going to get to a spot where I'm nice and comfortable. I'm going to work step, 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 all the way down. Hopefully close that gap up nice. I'm going to be shooting pretty much all my sparks and flame out the bottom. That's where you want it to be. And yeah, a lot of guys will hang back with the rod. And they'll sit up here in the long arc. And what's going to happen is if you got a long arc, that rod's going to heat up a giant keyhole. It's going to blow that right out. So keeping that rod actually stuffed down in there is going to be way better for heat control. You guys will do this in class. You'll find this when you get in here. Most people are going to do it at least once, but it's a good way of learning. I've done this enough times that I know I got to keep that rod in there nice and tight. I keep my arc force at 100. And I'm just going to start to warm up on the outside of the tack here. I'm going to warm up the rod, then I'm going to drop in, and you may hear the tone change a little bit. It's going to sound more like a rip or a hollow, kind of like a hissing kind of rip. That's letting you know that you're really pushing that stuff through. And you want 90% of the sparks and the flame to come out the bottom of the pipe. Or not the pipe, the plate. You don't want that much coming out on top. That means you don't have that rod in there tight enough. So enough of the talking. Let's make this happen here, folks. So we're going to start that rod up, and here we go. So one rod down. We change rods fast. We don't have to grind this out. Normally I would grind it and feather a little bit, but if you do it quickly, you don't have to. Boom. Just like that. So right there, guys, we have a root. So we're gonna bring this over to you. Talk about it a little bit. So here we have the root. You can see one rod got me here to here. Change rods. A little bit of a knob here. Well, I might have to grind that down. That's where I warmed up the other rod on top of the old weld, sunk it down in, and finished it up. But one thing I'll have you notice is if I hold it here, that weld's sitting quite deep in the bottom of that groove. It doesn't come up very high on the walls of the weld or the walls of the plates. That's what we want. That tells us that we're in there deep. On the back side, look at it. We got a fairly good root penetrated through. I'm not going to clean off yet. We're going to put the hot pass on, and then we'll clean this up and we'll take a look at it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scrape this down, see if I need to grind this little knob off. If I do, I'll do that. We'll grab a 1/8 turn it up another 10 amps probably, and lay a nice big hot flat section of bead in here. And that's going to grab both walls. It's going to make it easier for the 7018 to lay in there afterwards. Basically, it digs into the corners, cleans things up for us, stopping any possible slag entrapment in the corners of the weld. Because that slag is no, we don't want that. Yeah, so just having a quick peek at this, guys. I got a grinder right here. I grabbed one just in case. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna knock down the spot where I warmed up the rod. And in the middle, there's a little bit of a hump I don't like, so I'm gonna get rid of that. So, headphone user warning. Okay, so you don't have to go crazy with the grinder, guys. 6010 does all the digging for us, and we're going to use the shape of our weld to give us what we want. So I always brush it out, make sure I don't have any leftover slag in there. I don't want any entrapment. This next pass, the 6010, is going to do a lot of that for us. It's going to get rid of pretty much everything, give us a nice big flat surface to put our next weld beads on. So I'm going to turn this up 10 amps, and we'll get it done. All right, so I went up 10. And I'm just going to give us a lot of that stepping motion again. But I'm also going to give a little side-to-side wiggle if I have to make sure I get both sides nicely. I shouldn't have to with this, though. I've got that weld sunk deep enough down there that my puddle should grab both sides nicely. I'm kind of going to step that puddle along, try and make it look like a stack of dimes. All right, so with that, I was looking at the puddle the whole time and making sure that my puddle grabbed both edges of the bevel every single little step I did. So this should come out pretty darn flat, should be nice. Should leave us room for 2 fill passes and 3 cap passes if we're doing stringers, or 1 quick weave as a fill weave and 1 quick weave as a cap weave if we're doing weaves. The most important thing I'm going to say about this weld, guys, is after you've got the root in, is leaving the edges of the bevels intact, the top edges. So that hard straight line at the top of the bevel here, that's going to be your guide for your cap. So that I always make sure I leave those intact. Okay, I'm going to cool this. I'm going to buff it, and I'll show you kind of how this looks and why we put that hot pass in. All right, guys. So firstly, we're going to look at the front. So this is what it should look like for the most part after that hot pass goes in. So there is a little bit of a crown in the middle, but there's no deep recesses on either edge. That's what we're looking for. We want to grab both those edges, squeeze these plates together when that weld shrinks. And what that's going to do is, I'll show you a profile too. Pretty flat overall, nice and even, consistent the whole way. But the money's on the backside, guys. So there's that root we're looking for. 60-10. It could be a little more consistent, but honestly, this is the first one I've done in probably a year, so I'm happy with it. I don't practice these before I do them. I think I should know them well enough. And you know what? If they don't turn out, it's a teachable moment. That's fine. So this looks pretty good overall. It's hard to see the tie-in even. You can see back here where we started over top the other tack, we didn't quite get penetration, but that's pretty normal when you tack that way. That's why I teach it differently in the 30 level. And yeah, overall worked out pretty well. So what I want to do is I want to throw a couple passes in there for fill passes. So we're going to do those with 7018, 1/8, about 120 amps, 40% arc force. We're not going to be at that 100. So I'm going to grab a couple of rods and we're going to lay these in side by side and rock and roll with this. biggest thing with this, guy, is just being comfortable. So that's why I have you burn a bunch of rods and practice on scrap. Just getting used to how these rods work, how they light, their behavior. That's what I'm looking for. So the more familiar you are with them, the more comfortable you can be when it comes to operating them. I haven't done one of these demos in, like I said, probably about a year. Seems to be going quite well so far. That's just because I put in the time. I'm familiar with these. I know how they all work. I know the characteristics, and I know how I can run. So let's get those fill passes in here and we'll wrap up the day. So I'm adjusting my arc force to 40% and my amperage to 120 amps. So that's set there. When I do this, guys, I work from the far side back towards me. I don't work close and then far away. I work the far side. I watch the edge of the bevel the whole time. I'm going to watch the top edge of my puddle and the edge of the bevel. And I'm going to bring the edge of, or the top edge of my puddle up to the edge of my bevel. I'm not going to take away that edge. I'm going to leave that edge there. That's my guide for the cap. So I'm going to get it close, maybe a 16th away, just a little bit. And then that's going to help me keep my cap nice and straight. So I'm going to clean this off, make sure I can see properly. 6010 does produce a bit of plume of smoke. So you guys may have to clean your lenses if you get your head in there nice and tight. I also don't have any ventilation on today to help with audio purposes. It's just myself in here. I'm not really too worried about the ventilation, but if it was all of you in here, the ventilation would be on. Okay, so things are set up, 120 amps. Gonna fire this up, walk it down the one edge of the stringer, just like on the board. We're gonna do 2 side-by-side stringer passes. And yeah, let's make it happen, folks. Nothing to it but to do it. So let's do it. All right, past one, right up to the edge. But I didn't take that bevel away. That bevel is still there. For your guys' sake, I'm trying not to chip this too hard. Ooh, and I got a piece of slag down my shirt. So try not to have open collars, guys, because that one wasn't pleasant. All right, so this first one's not looking too bad. All right, sorry, folks. All right, so now we're gonna put the second one in, and then we'll show you that one. The second one in, I'm going to pretty much be directly over top of it. First one I was kind of hanging back, watching that edge. This one I kind of got to be more over top of it so I could see this back edge closest towards me. So I don't take that away because I want to leave that intact as well. You can work with just one edge, the far edge, for your cap, but having two edges is always better than one. At least it's what I find. So here we go. So if you notice, first pass and second pass, there's probably 2 inches difference in rod length. If I show you down here, use my shirt as a contrast, 2 inches different rod length. So the first rod, I burn more of. I always get in there right into the corner, hang out and use that as the majority of my fill, but I'm also paying very close attention to that top edge, getting that top edge pretty much filled. Second one, usually these bevels are tight enough that you don't need to burn that much rod for the second one. This here looks pretty much full. I'm gonna have 2 edges and just enough room for a nice 3-pass cap on top of this when we're all done. My first pass from this back position, I put it in at probably 20 degrees, 30 degrees of lean angle. So this is my bevel, I'm attacking it like this for the first one. Second one, I've got my full V groove there, and I pretty much come straight down to fill in that last bit. Then I'm working directly over it. I find that gives me a pretty nice profile as far as fill. It's flat, it's consistent. It does everything I want it to do. And you guys may find different things. If it works for you, it works for you. You're gonna find 10 different people talking 10 different ways on how they complete these groove welds, their amperages, their passes, stuff like that. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna give you what works for me. I'm gonna give you a general guideline to follow. You may adapt that. That is completely okay. I'm gonna cool this buffet and then we'll talk about it. All right, folks. So here is that weld. If we look at it from an end, I've got it pretty much full, but you can see the shadow of this edge and the shadow of that edge there. That is what I'm looking for. That leaves me a nice small cap to work with. You can see it there pretty good. Overall, things going pretty well on this. I'm quite happy with how it's turned out. Cap should go in nicely. I've got my edges to follow. And so if you end up taking those edges, guys, you can actually take a grinder, grind in and grind yourself a line to follow, a guide to follow. That gentleman in the video did that. I was never taught that. I've never done that, but it's completely okay. If that's what works for you, that's what works for you. So yeah, that is, let's see what we got for time here. 9:45. We got a few minutes. I'm gonna cap this. 3 quick passes, we'll call it done. So for the cap, what I'm gonna do is I'm turn down 5 amps, down to 115. This plate's a little bit cooler now. It's gonna take heat better as well. And we'll wrap this up. So we're still gonna use 1/8 rod. Some people use 332. I don't like switching rod sizes. Then you're switching with settings. There's too many variables, stuff you might forget. So it really sucks when you go to put in a 1/8 and you're at 332 settings and you're trying to run it at 85 amps and it doesn't want to light, it just sticks. Yeah, it's pain in the butt. So too many variables in my mind. I stay with the same rod size the whole time. So I'm just gonna pop in here, get nice and stable, follow this line. Then we'll place one on top. I basically run my beads in a 50-50 overlap. So my second bead covers half of my first bead. My third bead covers half of my second bead. That's a good bonding and strong process. That's why we put it on the toe of those welds. So there we go. Let's do this. All right, so leaving that top edge, gave me something nice to follow. A bit of a wobble in there, nothing major, but things are looking good. This cap's peeling up already. I got a chunk of peel here. That'll just wipe right off. So I'm gonna run my second bead. Halfway up on my first bead, gonna get a new rod for that. I save all my rod chunks, guys. All those are gonna be practice for like 3x3 plates, stuff like that. Line this up, gonna put this in the toe of that weld, halfway up over this one, then we'll put our last one in. Okay, second one in, nice and straight. It's getting warm like mine is, guys. Don't be afraid. Give yourself something to rest your hand on. You can mess up a weld, you can burn your hands, you can do that stuff trying to be a tough guy, but you know what? I'm gonna give myself a handle here, make it easy for myself. When I was younger, I used to think burns were badges of honor. You're working hard and you sacrifice yourself for the weld. That's just silly. We don't do that anymore. No reason we should be burning ourselves. Finish up a weld. All right. So this is where I want it. I've got enough rod here to finish up this weld. So I'm going to finish up this weld with this rod. I'm going to use my guide here. It's nice, fairly quick pass. Don't want to build it up too much. And we'll wrap this up. And just like that, we're done. 1 inch of rod to spare. We're doing good. General rule, I find, if you got 6 inches of weld, you need 6 inches of rod to get it done. So I had about 7 inches of rod, 6 inches of weld. Ended up with 1 inch of rod left. Okay, not bad. What we'll do is we'll pop this off in here. See if we can do it this way. Pull it down, buff it up, get you out of here. So here we go, folks. Complete a weld. What's best for angle? That's not bad. I got a little wider at the end, so I'm a little wider at the end here than I am here. That was because my first pass wasn't as stable as I wanted, but overall went pretty well. You got 3 passes set up there. You can see them 1, 2, 3, but there's no big valleys between them. The root looks good on the back. And that is Mr. Scott's version of a 1G groove weld. So hope you guys enjoyed that. This is fun. It was nice. I'm surprised it turned out this well. I haven't done one in, like I said, a year. But it's awesome. You kind of don't lose it. Once you have it, you've learned it, and it's kind of stuck in here. The body remembers how to move. Yeah, it's just nice. It's kind of like riding a bike. So thank you much this morning, guys. Really appreciate it. I don't have any homework for you today. I was just watch this video and start prepping you guys for getting back into class here. So thank you much. Have yourselves a great day. Stay healthy, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.